Anyway, I'll get started, and hopefully everyone will show up so we don't fall behind. Really is gewaldic, the concepts in today's daf. I mean, as far as I'm concerned. Also, I didn't plan on bringing props. I hear somebody coming in, but since we learned in the room that the kids play, I found a little blocks. Good morning, and so we're going to use some of the blocks maybe to help some of these concepts. Anyway, let's start. Sukka hamiduvlelet, a sukkah that is miduvleles. Now, at the moment, the Gemara is not explaining what that word means. Silasa meruba mechamasa, and whose shade exceeds its sunlight. All right, that's a kosher sukkah. So part two of that statement in Mishnah, we know you have to have more shade. The Gemara will later on go into more depth. What does it exactly mean? Another ruling in the Mishnah. Hama'uba b'min bias. And the sukkah that is so thickly covered in schach that it looks mamish like a house. Afal pi she'en ha'kochavim nirin mitocha, even though the stars cannot be seen from inside it, is still valid. All right? Chav Beis, the top of the Mishnah. Chav Beis Amud Aleph. Sukkah Hamad, right there. Okay? Now the Gemara is going to try and explain what is this word miduvdelas. All right? Gemara, my miduvdelas. What does this mean, miduvdelas? Amarav. Rava says, Sukkah Aniya. It's like a poor man's sukkah. It's a meager sukkah, one that's covered with a thin layer of schach, meaning that there's many gaps between it, the reeds. Ushmuel, Rav and Shmuel always seem to be arguing or discussing. Ushmuel, oh, by the way, I cannot mute everyone. So whoever's listening has to mute themselves. And then if you have a question, just unmute. So Moshe, Herschel, I'm here in the background. Herschel, if you can mute, that would help. But I don't hear anything from you anyway. All right. Shmuel says, Kona ole al Kona. It's a schach who's arranged that one reed is up and one is down. So let's make believe these are reeds. And we're going to discuss later, does it mean like this? Or does it mean like this? When they say one is up and one is down. All right? That is, the schach is staggered. That means the second one. That means that the schach is staggered so that every other reed is laid at one level. So let's just imagine, here's level 1 all the way up on the top of the roof, level 2, level 3. So when you put them all together, if you technically can drop them, all right, like we learned in, the overhangs when we were learning about Erev Chatzeros, it goes straight down from the overhang to the floor. That would be okay. So same thing here. The schach, the upper level comes down to the lower, or the lower comes up to the level within certain parameters, and it's as if they're all together. These are wonderful concepts to just think of outside of the sukkah, as far as Avos Yisrael and stuff like that, and even reaching higher levels of learning. So Rav Tanei Chada, Rav teaches the first part of the Mishnah is describing one case, Ushmuel Tanei Tarte, but Shmuel says it's describing two cases. As the Gemara will now explain, Rav Tanei Chada, Rav teaches it is describing one case. We just started Chav Beis for Amud Aleph. We're in the Gemara explaining the Mishnah, right? Describing one case. Is your other half coming? Okay. We've got the Helinsky twins, Okay, as usual, thank you so much. Sukkah miduvleles. A sukkah does miduvleles. My miduvleles. What does miduvleles mean? He's going to explain, according to his opinion. Meduleles. What is the definition? It means meager. All right? Shetzilasa meruba mechamasa ksera. In other words, his definition of a meager sukkah is one whose shade, it's meager, but at the same time, there's more shade therefore it's kosher. So it's not two different halachas we're learning here. Ushmuel Tanei Tate. But Shmuel teaches the first part of the Mishnah is actually describing two cases. My meduvleles, mevubeles, right? Because he interprets meduvleles as meaning staggered. Again, what we said before, like this. Okay? Tate Katani, and the two distinct cases are as follows. Excuse me, it's a bit of a tongue twister, this Mishnah. Sukka mevul beles kshera. A staggered sukkah is valid. Once again, top layer schach is here, bottom layer schach is here, and it's as if they each reach each other. Or when the Gemara chaf beis amad al. All right? And one whose shade exceeds its sunlight is also valid. And meaning that's the second halacha. All right? That which is what we typically hold, that you have to have the majority of shade coming from the schach. So one holds one is Rav is learning one halacha from the Mishnah, Shmuel is learning two. All right. Amar Abai. So now Abai says, Lo shano el shein bein zeh lazeh shloshet tvachim. The Mishnah, which validates a staggered sukkah, refers only to where there are not three tvachim of empty space between the upper reeds and the lower reeds adjacent to it. In that case, the sukkah is valid. Okay, so once again, we've had the upper, the lower, but the lower can't be all the way down here. It's got to be within three tvachim. If it's with, this is obviously not on scale, but if it's within, let's say 1, 2, 2.5 tvachim, then you can vertically adjoin it. You know, when we spoke about lovud, we spoke less of a techvach between, let's say, the reeds on top. We said lovud, what's in the center, it's as if it doesn't exist, and they're all merged. All right. Now we're talking, you see, called chavut, where it's a vertical thing. Right. You know, think back this horrible year we had with COVID, right? And then finally they let us come into shul, but you had distancing. You had to be at least 6 feet apart, all right? But your Chevraman, the person who sat 6 feet away from you, it was as if he sat next to you. We were still davening together, right? It's as if the 6 feet in between didn't exist, all right? So with Lovewood, the space in between, you know, if it's less than the tefach, it's as if it doesn't exist, and they're merged. With chavut, which is a term we'll learn, if it's within 3 tvachim, upper and lower levels, one level is as if they're on the same level, right? But if the 3 tvachim exists, in other words, 3 or more between the 2 levels, psula, then the sukkah is invalid. Amar Rava, afilo yesh bein lazeh shlosha tvachim nami. He says nami. So who is that? Rava says, you know what? Even if there's 3 tvachim between the 2 upper and lower level of the schach, again, you know, think of it as when you see these pallets that are left on the swale after they delivered grass or things. Typically, the pallets are made so you see slats of wood here, and then opposite in between slats of wood on the other side. That's something like that. Or imagine that's the way they are. Or go home or find a bunch of what you call it, popsicle sticks, and make yourself your own sukkah like that with 2 roofs, double level but staggered slats. All right. By the way, I was trying to find popsicle sticks in my wife's arts and crafts collection, but I couldn't find it. Guess she's too sophisticated for popsicle sticks, or I just didn't know where they were. Lo amrinan ella shein begafo tefach. All right, hey Yosef. All right. So we didn't say that this sukkah is invalid when the levels are separated by 3 tvachim or more, except when each level of the reeds of the upper level is not a tefach wide. Okay, so now we get into the concept of what if we're dealing with less than the tefach width to the reeds or the schach, all right? So he's saying that's where it's not good. Aval yesh begavo tefach, but if each of the reeds of the upper level is a tefach wide, kishera. He says the sukkah is valid no matter how far apart the two layers are. So once again, we said that if you have an upper level where the reeds are spaced like this, and the lower level, the reeds are spaced like this. So technically, you can adjoin the levels, all right? See, Maisha, drop the upper to the lower to the upper, all right? That's fine as long as they're within 3 tefachim, all right? But it says they have to be themselves at least a tefach. No, they didn't have to be a tefach wide. But if it's more than tefachim, according to him, says if it's at least a tefach wide, it's shera, even if they're further apart. Excuse me, further apart 3 tefachim this way, because originally we said they had to be within 3 tefachim. The Gemara at the end will explain, is that from above, from below, from, where is there margins for the 3 tefachim? Damrinan chavet remi. For we say lower and cast the upper reed upon the space below. English, I don't know what that means in English. Chavet means what I just said. When you take the upper and the lower vertical levels, and you just imagine that there wasn't this wide dimension, it's 2-dimensional, looking from above, and they're actually together. Okay? Amara, Rabbi said, Mina Amina La. Based on what do I say this? Techi ispe tefach amrinan chavat remi. That when it has the width of a tefach, we say chavat. Techi leispe lo amrinan chavat. But when it doesn't have the width of a tefach, we don't say lower. In other words, we don't say chavat. Once again, the whole concept of chavat is putting the 2 levels together. So when does he say that it needs at least to be a tefach as opposed to smaller, all right? It's not, because we learned in the Mishnah, karas habayis v'aliyah, if the beams of the ground floor of a house and of the upper story, she'en aleha ma'azeva, that do not have plaster on them, you would know this as a, you build things, this is where they made the roof, a flat roof, and plastered the roof. And they, the 2 layers of the beams, are aligned exactly, one above the other. Oh, this way, okay? It's like rafters when the flat roof, one is right above the other. I think tuma tachas achas mehen. If there's, let's say, a dead body under one of them, let's say the bottom one, tachta tummy, then anything under this lower level, all right, that board is going to be tamei. Anywhere along the length of the board, beinat, all right, excuse me, bein hatachtana le'oyana, if the tomb exists between the lower beam and the upper beam, beinehem tamei. So remember, the tamei kind of hits the ceiling here. So if they're one under the other, just like this, then let's say the dead rat is here, the dead sheretz, so the dead body was hidden, instead of buried, it was hidden in the crawl space on top. I don't know, whatever. Then in this space, it's tamei. And any other utensil that's on that board between the upper and the lower level is tamei. Agabe halyana, but what if it's on top of the roof? So it's actually on top of the second board, not in between. Okay? Benegda adler akia tame says, he says, a utensil that's directly opposite the tumah, anywhere above the beam until the sky is still tame. He says, because there's no ohel on top of the upper beam to block the tumah from rising to infinity. Okay, I'm not sure I followed that. All right. Oh, there was another category. If the dead body is on top of the roof, in other words, on top of the second beam, he says, then it goes all the way up the tumah to the heaven. the Tumah automatically has obtained what's it called when you have the rights to go up and build. Like in Israel, if you own a house and you're on the top floor, you can build on top of it. There's a word for that. Okay. What?
The air rights.
Air rights. Thank you, Mike. I didn't even know you're still there. Mike should know. Yeah, the air rights. So in this case, if the tumah is on top, that beam has the air rights with the tumah and everything. So whereas if the tumah, meaning the impurity, the dead body was in between the two beams, then it stops at the second beam. All right. The Mishnah now discusses a different arrangement of upper and lower beams. If the upper ones corresponded to the spaces between the lower ones, all right, that's actually, we've been discussing this, the upper ones correspond to the spaces between the lower ones. So here are two lower ones, and then imagine there's an upper one in between, all right? It's kind of what we've been discussing. We said that would come down to fill the gap. If it was smaller than the tefach, we said we didn't even need it because it was loved. But here we say it's covered. So let's Tuma tachtehen, if a source of a corpse, Tuma, is under any one of them, tachas kulan tameh, then anything beneath all of them is tameh. Well, that makes sense because we've said that if you have the spaces filled in by the ones above that have now dropped down, you've essentially created a whole ceiling. So if there's a tummy under a ceiling, then the tummy, the impurity spreads, all right, throughout that house. Al gabeyan, if the tummy is on top of one of them, kinegden adler akia tummy, then the utensil that's directly opposite the tumah on top of them until the sky is tummy, all right? Okay, so now it's saying if it's on the rooftop, right? You're directly opposite the tumah on top of them. Let me make sure I give you the opposite on top of them till the sky is done. Oh, so you have, remember, so now since we're merging both levels, then the tameh on top of anyone, if there's another utensil, a regular utensil, somewhere else on the roof, since we've now made one level, one flat roof, technically, that's tameh too, and anything up above. So if someone's got a drone and they're flying utensils to the mikveh on the drone and they go over this, they're tameh. And this is why some Kohanim are worried when they're in the plane, they're flying over a cemetery. Again, the air rights, unfortunately, are air wrongs as far as tumah is concerned. Okay, Robin. Yeah, I don't know, the Daf Yomi is not halacha shir, so I can't answer that. But apparently, there's some issues there, and for some Kohanim who are especially worried. And I was listening to to review the case. Yeah, I learned this on my own, and to review it this morning, I was listening to Rabbi Stefanski in Israel because he's ahead, and he was telling stories about Kohanim on planes, and they avoid routes and this and that. So Yeshkach to Rabbi Eli Stefanski knew all these stories about how they would actually, check if it was going over. He's mentioned the Tel Aviv cemetery and this and that. So I don't know the details, but apparently that exists. All right. Tani Allah. And an explanatory brisa teaches regarding this Mishnah. It's about time. Good to see you. My counselor, I'm in summer camp, my counselor just showed up. Kamadvarim Amorim. In what situation are these things said in the Mishnah? In other words, when do all the Mishnah's rulings hold true? Bisman sheyesh behen tefach. When the lower beams have the width of a tefach. We've been saying that all the time. These are the width of a tefach. Uvanen posech tefach. And between each of the lower beams is the space of a tefach too. All right? And remember, the upper beams are tefachs and they're filling in the space below. So you've got the lower roof with spaced beams, all right? And an upper roof that has the beams directly above the spaces so that we technically bring them down. So to say, we turn 3 dimensions into 2 dimensions. All right? It's amazing what Jews do. We can take materiality, make it in spirituality, and things like that. Or at least that's what we're supposed to do. When the lower beams have within them the tefach space, and they themselves tefach. All right. But if there is not between them the space of a tefach, if there's something tameh, something impure under any one of them, all right, then anything beneath them, let me see, under one of the beams, tefach wide, Tuma tachas achamim, then if a source of tuma is under one of them, that is under one of these tefach wide lower beams, tachta tami, a utensil that's under or beneath that beam, we said somewhere along that beam is tamei, beinehem, but in between where the spaces, bial gabehen, and above a tahor. All right, because the ceiling was only under here. All right. The ceiling was only under, you see it? I mean, okay. Rava concludes this is proof. Oh, someone just put up, oh, thank you, Yosef. Someone put up the picture. I have all these pictures too. They're, by the way, great pictures in black of the blue Gemaras, and you see all these examples. Thanks, Yosef. Right, Rava concludes his proof. Alma, thus we see from this, that when the covering has the width of a tefach, amrinan chavas remi. Again, chavas means chavot. Keep it saying chavas. Chavot is the term when we are dealing with the vertical axis, we bring it down to fill the space. All right, Professor? So here, but the one on top is brought down this way. Whereas when we were discussing the last few days, we talked loved, we were saying that this space is if it doesn't exist, and we brought on the horizontal axis them together to say everything's kind of sealed. But if it doesn't have in it the width of a tefach, suppose it's smaller brick, okay? Lo amrinan chavot. We don't say that you can do that, all right? So, when coming has, but when it doesn't have, when it's with the tefach, lo amrinan chavot. Okay. Shmamina. Let's learn from this more, all right, whatever. Yosef Rav Kahana B'kama Lahag Shmata. Rav Kahana was sitting and relating this teaching of Rav. Amalei Ravashi, the Rav Kahana. Ravashi said to Rav Kahana, V'cho hecha deleis bei tefach. Whenever there's a covering that doesn't have in it the width of a tefach, lo amrinan chavet, Rami. Every time he has Remy, I think it's saying Renny, all right? Lo amrinan, we do not say that it's chavat. In other words, you need this tefach qualifying, Bahatanya. So why is it been taught otherwise in the following brisa? Let's see where we learned elsewhere. All right. Kara hayotze me'akotel zeh. Again, there's a good picture in there, but let's say you have a wall. This we learn in Chatzeros, and coming out of the wall, we're not reaching the other wall, all right? It's kind of a mavoi, but there's a incomplete bridge or an incomplete pole going to the other wall. But it doesn't reach the other wall, all right? This is in a mavoi, in an alleyway. It stops short, leaving a gap. The chen shtei kares, or what if you had 2 walls and there's 2 kares reaching each other, and one comes from the other, and they don't reach each other. In that case, they're talking about it's short of 3 tefachim in length. All right, just a different measurement there. You don't have to bring another wood beam to join them. So in other words, it's valid for making that wall for carrying within that area. This is what we learned. Remember when we learned Chatzeres? You have an alleyway, all right? There's 3 walls, all right? What do you do for the 4th? You're supposed to put a bar all the way across. It talks about bar this way, making part like a sukkah part of the 4th wall. All right, from what I remember. So he's saying if it goes across this way, but doesn't reach the end, or you have 2, but they don't reach each other, as long as where it doesn't reach is within 3 tvachim, 1, 2, 3, then it's still okay. But if the gap is 3 tvachim or more, then you have to bring another another piece of wood to kind of seal the beams. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Amir, all right, we're now up to Chaf Beis on the case, right? Pachas Miaba, he says it's got to be less than 4. Ain't tzarech.
And those 2 proving, but there's a lot of space between the 2.
Depends if the Jews were good or not, because it depends if the wings were going this way or this way. So don't ask me. I'm not the rough. I'm just kind of. I am the loved. I am the filler here till the rabbi comes back. Hurry up, rabbi, come back. Okay. He says if it's so. He said, all right. We're coding here. It's almost the same thing. Whether it's 3 or 4, you don't have to bring another beam, right? Similarly, let's say you have 2 very thin chorus, all right? Not thick like this, but thin ones, all right, at the entranceway. And neither one has the strength to support the half brick, all right? Now we're talking about passing zoning. Nor has one sufficient width to support a half brick. So it's not wide enough, and it ain't strong enough, and you can't put a half of a brick on. If together they can support a half brick widthwise, then that'll work. So if you had 1 and 1 thin ones, and they were able to hold. You know why I have this? Because the kids use this room when this was by the table, right? Okay. If together they can support a half brick widthwise, in other words, if together they are tefach wide, then it's not necessary to bring another korah, being love. But if combined, this doesn't equal a tefach, then you have to bring another piece of wood. Rabbi Shimon de Gamliel Omer, if combined, it can support a half of a brick lengthwise, which measures 3 tvachim, and tzarech lavi korah acheres, and you don't have to bring another piece of wood. Vim lav, if not, tzarech lavi korah acheres. Okay. Brisa continues with another case. Hayu eches lamala ve'eches lamata. Okay. What if one was higher than the other? Okay. We're still talking. We're not in the sukkah anymore. We're talking here about these boards coming out in the mavoi of the wall. But let's say one was here and one was here. So you obviously can't put a brick between the 2. Question, yeah.
Stick it up.
It's good. It's not a halacha, and I don't know the answer. Let's see what they say on the Gemara. Stop with these trick questions because I don't know the answers. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi. By the way, it wouldn't be vertically because they don't reach. It would still be at an angle. So it would go this way, angle, this way. But I'm not saying that anything's wrong with it. I don't know. Okay. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says, "Roin ha'yana ke'ilu hilamata." We view the upper korah as if it were below. V'zachtana ke'ilu hilamala, and the low one as if it's above. I'm being played with these little things here from our counselor. Thank you, Yitz. And I shall return them to you afterward. Okay. So if you notice, this brisa has the same concept of what we just learned in the sukkah, that you bring the above, below, and below, up, below, above. And I want you to go away with how I went away from this. Is it kept on reminding me, first of all, Hasinai. All right, the upper heavens came down below, and the lower heavens were the tumbled. Number two, when we do a small thing on this world, it creates great, and then it comes back to us even more so. All right. And at the end of the Gemara, we're going to talk about a little speck of light on top of a pinhole, like a pinhole camera. All right. But it can cause a lot of light as it fans out on the bottom. All right. You know, so don't think if there's only a little pinhole that Hashem doesn't see what you do. I mean, there's so many things you can think of here, none of which can I substantiate, but these were the kind of emotional feelings I was getting trying to prepare this. So as I say, take away the spiritual concepts that you might see connected, but I can't give you any proof. Right. He says, but there's an exception that when we say you can merge the upper and the lower, like we said, chavut, all right, the upper one cannot be above 20 amas. Doesn't this sound like the sukkah?
Yes.
One opinion was it can't be above 20 amas. All right, he says, and the lower not less than 10 tzvachim, and the lower one can't be below 10 tzvachim. All right, but now I have a question. That kind of sounds silly to me, because if the upper can't be above 20 and the lower can't be below 10, 20 amas and 10 tvachim, we're way beyond 3 tvachim difference. So how does that answer the previous statement? Well, obviously, that's not the answer. That's just the preamble to the answer. It says, Hazeh v'zeh b'tach esrim. It says, all right, Rav Yossi, the son of Rav Yehuda's statement is that we're dealing within the 20, below the 20, and above the 10, and these two pieces of wood are within 3. So when he says within 3 tvachim, it's within still a minimum and a maximum height. All right. I'm reading the Chavat Rami, then we can say Chavat again. Chavat meaning that they're vertically adjoined. Avagab delays pay tefach, even though they don't have a tefach, because up until now we were saying you had to have at least the width of a tefach. Amalei, let me see how far we're at. Amalei, all right, we're halfway down the page. Oh, we're gonna make it. Amalei Rav Ashi, excuse me. So Rav Ashi said, no, excuse me. Rav Kahana said to Rav Ashi, Taretz ve'ema hachi. Answer and say Rav Yossi, the son of Rav Yehuda, meant this. Provided that the vad shalot tehei el yana l'mala mi'asrim. I just answered that. That's what I just said. That the answer should be it can't be above the higher rod can't be above 20, and the low one can't be below 10. Inami bavad shlo tehei tachtan lomata miyasara. She said, "Ela lamasa miyasara v'oyana smuchala b'fachas mishloshin." That's what we just said. That we're talking about within that distance, and they themselves are within 3 tvach. Aval shlosha, but if the upper and lower course are separated by 3 tvach and more, then they can't be combined. So what we're learning here is all different scenarios of how, when you can combine and when you can't combine. All right?
Like marriage. Yep.
No, there you can't combine. No. You know, that's where you put the magnets in the. Oh, I'm married almost 45 years. Listen to me. No, once you get joined, it's like it's really very hard to unjoin. Very hard. Okay. Just kidding. I love my wife. Right. Kevin Lace Bay Tefach. She's not gonna listen to this one. Kevin Lace Bay Tefach. For since it does not have the width of Tech, lo Amrina Chavis Remy, right? Because there, since it wasn't a Tefach, we don't say Chavis.
Say Remy.
Chavis. Right, every time I say Remy, I think of Remy. It's not saying Remy. Okay. Now let's go back to the second thing. When we said that the Mishnah said that the shade has to exceed the sunlight, all right, we're going to interpret them more. Haki Hadadei Psula says, it is only if the shade exceeds the sunlight that the sukkah is valid. That's how we always hold it. But if the shade and sunlight are equal one to another, it's invalid.
Why?
Oh, okay, so we're gonna define it better. V'hatznan be'idach pirkin. What? Oh, Moshe is leaving. Gotta go on the- Thank you. See you, Moshe. Stay fit. V'hatznan be'idach pirkin. But we've learned in the Mishnah in another chapter, B'shechamasa meruba mitzilas psula, says if sunlight exceeds its shade, it's invalid. Haki hadedek shera. It's only if the sunlight exceeds the shade that the sukkah is invalid. But if the sunlight and shade would be equal, it would be valid. So here we're bringing another Mishnah that says if they're equal, it is valid. Where here we just learned it's invalid. So there must be a difference. My Benayo, what's the difference between them? Gemara's answers. Lo kasha, no difficulty. Kan milamala, here in our Mishnah, which implies the sukkah with equal amounts of shade and sunlight is invalid, it's referring to the schach, right? Because when you look up at the schach, you have to have a majority of shade in the schach as opposed to the sunlight coming through. But the other one, kan milamata, the second Mishnah is talking about the amount of sunlight that comes down on the floor. The Gemara remarks that the phenomenon upon which this answer is reflected in the following story. Amar Rav Papa, Rav Papa said, Haino damrei in shade. This phenomena of light diffusing as it moves further from its source is captured by that which people said, Kizuza milael is tira mi letachas. The size of a zuz from above is like the size of an istara below. Think of the zuz as a tiny penny, and the istara is like a $50. All right? If you have a tiny pinhole up above in the schach, and the sun is coming through, again, it diffuses the light and makes more light below. So here, again, we're talking about in that other Mishnah, he said, if you end up with more light below, well, we said, then it would be invalid. Whereas whichever way we said. In one of them, I remember what we said.
Keep going, Dave.
What did we say? In ours, one of them, it's valid if they're equal. The other one, if there's more sunlight, it's not valid. So I think the first story was if up above there's more sunlight than shade, it's invalid. The other one said if they're equal, we said if it's equal, and then we have to go back. Let's just go over this again. All right. The Gemara says, sunlight exceeds its shade is kosher. Wait. We have learned in the Mishnah, if the sunlight is more than the shade, it's puzzle. All right? Well, we didn't say that was how the Mishnah started, right? The sukkah is valid. But if the sunlight and the shade were equal, then the sukkah would be valid. That's how we first started. All right. Then we said there's not really a question. He says it depends on where you're looking, at above or below. So he says when you're looking below where there's equal amounts of shade and sunlight, then it's valid. But if you're looking below and there's more light diffusion, let's go. I'm a little confused. I don't want to waste time. When you get a chance, go back and review the two variations and see the difference between light. What?
Don't let it throw you. Keep going.
No, I'm not gonna, yeah, because we have 12 minutes. All right. But now what about a sukkah that's covered like a house? It's so thickly covered, all right? The rabbis torn the brisa. Uba come in bias, a sukkah that's so thickly covered like a house. And you see some people here, they put so much schach, they only need a dozen palm branches, and they're putting 3 dozen on. I mean, I don't even know if they can see any stars. All right, is that good? It says, even though you can't see the stars from in that sukkah, it's still kshera, it's still valid. However, if the schach is so thick, then even if the rays of sun cannot be seen from inside the sukkah, Beis Shammai puzzling, Beis Shammai says it's not kosher. Beis Hillel says it is kosher. What now? This is cute. Oh, I have some real good pictures of this, but you guys really can't see it unless you go on. All right, hold on a second. So give me a moment here for those people who are tuned in. All right, where is the pictures? Hold on a second. Well, we're going to cover some. Okay, this is a picture of these. This is the one on top of a camel. For those who can, I'll just leave that in the background. All right, that's a sukkah on top of a camel. I have one on top of a bicycle and one on top of a boat. All right, house sukkah b'rosh hagala. He makes it on top of a wagon. All right, not very stable. We see it here on top of trucks. Or b'rosh hasfina, or on top of the ship. And it's not just talking about a sukkah on a ship. It's talking about, think of a cruise ship. And you're going all the way up to the top level. And on the top level, you put the sukkah where the winds are really blowing. In which you put a sukkah in a place where it can really blow over. He says, it's valid. And you can go up on a yontif. Barash ha'ilan, but what if you put it on top of a tree? All right, I did have a nice picture, and you guys probably have it. Let me find the one here of on a tree. Hold on. Oh, here. Okay. Okay, here's a sukkah that's built. You can't really see it on top of a tree. By the way, that looks almost like my tree house in my backyard. If you ever come to my house, go to the backyard and see the 3-level tree house. It's built within an oak tree.
Pretty
So,
cool. In fact, I think we should.
but that's
all go
not-
there tonight.
that's not go bring a broom to clean it out. Because by the way, you know who it used to be raccoons. First cats, feral cats lived in the treehouse when my kids weren't there. Then raccoons took it over. And you know what the last animal we saw living in there is?
Alligators.
Nope.
Hold on, let's guess.
Fox.
Fox.
Fox is living there.
How do you get upstairs?
Yes. What?
How do you get-
I think he lives underneath the bottom level. Anyway, let's get back. So listen, for all Labiyatov, he says, you may go, Barash Ha'ilan, it makes a sukkah on top of a tree or on top of a camel. All right, that was the last picture I showed. Kishera, it's kosher, the sukkah, Olin Labiyatov, it's valid, but we're not allowed to go up on it in Yontif. All right, ve'ain, kshera ve'ain Olin Labiyatov. All right? Because you can't go on the tree, you might break a branch, you can't ride a horse, you might break a branch. So we have these rabbinical prohibitions for that. So it's not that the sukkah is not kosher, it's kosher for the rest of the week. It's kosher for Chol HaMoed. It's not kosher on Yontif. Shtayim be'ilan be'echad b'idei adam. If 2 walls of the sukkah are in a tree and one is man-made, or shtayim b'idei adam be'echad be'ilan, or 2 walls are man-made and one is in a tree, meaning that we have 3 walls to a sukkah. Kishera ve'enolim la b'yantav. It's still kosher, but we don't go up on yantav. Shlosha b'idei adam be'echad be'ilan. If 3 walls of a sukkah are man-made and one is in the tree, kishera ve'olim la b'yam. We may go up even on Yom Tov. Okay, we finished the daf, and we still have 8 minutes. So let's go back to that question we had about the what was about the shade, right? Let's just read that again. So we know. Hold on. Okay, this was the statement. If the shade exceeds the sunlight, it's valid. That was the statement, and we took that to mean it's talking about the schach. If it is only if the shade exceeds the sunlight, but if the shade and the sunlight is equal, the Mishnah says it's invalid. Okay, so far you got that? You have to have a majority of shade, but if they're equal, it's invalid. It says, now they bring another Mishnah. We learned in the Mishnah in another chapter, all right? All right? All right? So, sunlight exceeds its shade is invalid. Haki hadidek shera. But if the sunlight shade were equal, the sukkah is valid. So now we have a problem. One Mishnah says that it's valid if it's equal. One says it's invalid if it's equal. So what's the answer? Gemara answers lo kasha. Kan milamala. In our Mishnah, which implies that a sukkah with equal amounts of shade and sunlight is invalid, it refers to above. In other words, above you have to have in the schach a majority of shade. Kan, all right, where we're learning now, the second one it implies looking at the floor below, that when it's equal below, then it's valid, right? No way. Well, I keep on losing the last sentence. In our Mishnah, which says it's equal amounts and it's of sun and shade is invalid. So equal amounts above is invalid, but equal amounts below is valid. And they give the proof of that with the coin, because a little dot above can bring a lot of light below, and therefore below and above are not really equal measurements. Let's just stop there before I get any more mixed up. All right. Thank you for showing up.
Oh yeah.
And 6 minutes before minyan. You know what that's like in the old TV shows, they would say applause and they would have the canned applause or canned laughter. Thank you very much.